to Anxiety Slayer. Ananga and I are so grateful that you're here with us again this week for a conversation about our mind stories and the fiction that our mind creates that we sometimes believe wholeheartedly and that can cause us a whole lot of suffering and a whole lot of harm. So we have some ideas today about how to work with that and how to eliminate what feels so real in those stories that our mind creates. Welcome back, Ananga.
Hey, Shan.
Some of the stories that we hear about often are stories about health or social scenarios or just being in a position where our mind makes us feel small, like we can't do the things we want to do. Those are the three things that I hear about the most.
Yeah, I think those are really common experiences. The stories, the catastrophizing, the way the mind can take something, just a daily thing, and take it to the worst case scenario. The unhelpful internal dialogue that says we can't do this, or this is always going to be this way, or that's going to get worse. And we don't know those things. And it takes away our ability to be resourceful and adaptive and kind of shrinks us. And I think if the mind gains traction, if it gains energy from our anxious response, it can really hijack us. And once it builds that kind of energy, it's very difficult to get out. And it can be a prolonged experience of, as you said, Shan, real suffering. And it's all inside. It's a total inside job. And then we're meeting friends or working or doing the things we need to do, trying to look okay, trying to be functional. And we've got this energy inside that's leading us such a horrible dance and exhausting us. And I think that can feel lonely. That can feel isolating if we're trying to hold it together.
Yeah, without question. It's like there's a program running in the background at all times.
Yeah.
And then to be in that space of just wanting so much to release it and to be, air quotes, normal again is takes its toll sometimes. And this is why you'll often hear us talk about the importance of removing yourself from negativity, negative headlines, negative people, and places where we know might not serve us well. There are some times, for instance, that it makes zero sense for me to put myself in a big box store. There's a Costco near us that has these big ceiling fans, and the way that the light works with the fans will sometimes um, mess with my brain, with my eyes. There's a flickering. So if I'm not doing well, uh, I can't go there. I can't shop there because that could trigger a migraine. It could trigger a panic attack. Which might sound silly, but I promise you it's not silly. But it's part of the story I tell myself about those fans and that light, right? Because how many times do I shop there and it's not a problem at all? But if I fixate on it, if I fixate on what my mind tells me.
I think also we have fluctuating resilience as well, and that's okay. There's times when we can handle those things and times where we can't. I can't take too much sensory input. It takes all the energy out of my body. Lights, music, other conversations. My mind hears everything at the same level. It's very hard for me to prioritize incoming sensory information. Sometimes we have the bandwidth where we can cope with stuff, and sometimes we don't. And I think this is where journaling is so important and self compassion is so important because what can we do? If that's how it is, that's how it is. If our mind needs support, better to give the support than to have another dialogue where we compare ourselves to other people who apparently cope better, but we don't really know that because other people probably think we're coping okay because everyone's doing their best to look normal.
We are all doing our best, and there's so much going on behind the scenes that we don't know for every being on this planet, which is it brings me back to why it's so incredibly important to be kind and generous and open-hearted whenever possible because you just don't know what somebody else is going through. And when our mind is really out of sorts and creating these stories about uh, something happening with your health or a visit to the doctor, and you already are uncomfortable being scrutinized, or you've got a social event to go to that you're both excited and completely exhausted by before you even walk in. That kind of where your mind will feed, and it's so incredibly important to come back and say, okay, yes, I know there's a part of me that is struggling with needing to go and have my physical. But also, I have to remember that this person, this doctor, this nurse, this practitioner is doing this because they care for people and want to help people. I'll journal about it. I'll talk to you about it. I get through it. And usually, when I'm on the other side of it, I'm so grateful for the kindness I was shown, that my mind had created this minefield, and the actual experience was as lovely as it possibly could be.
Yeah, I think that's really important to remember the intention of the practitioner we're seeing. Their intention is to help and to offer support. And I think if we can get that in our minds and hold that, that really helps.
And the same with social events. If you have something that is coming up and you need to be there, and a part of you really wants to be there, and a part of you doesn't, that's where you can go back and revisit the experiences that you've had that have worked out just fine. When you can give yourself boundaries, you know what? I am going to go and I'm going to leave early so I give myself extra time to arrive. And it's also okay if I need to leave early, if I need to carve out exactly whatever it is to show up, to be present, and then to move on. That it doesn't have to fit in any kind of rigid box that says you must be here from this time to this time and so on. And I realize if you have there's certain events that have a start and end time, but do you get what I'm saying? Like to give yourself flexibility as possible.
Yeah, and I think we can learn from past events. If they were okay, we can put that, under our hat and say, look, this is what worked for me and I have experience of that and I can do it again. And if there's something that we feel we do differently this time, then we have the opportunity to do that. Sometimes we need an end time. There's an author I very much like, and she said about an event she was going to, and she said at the bottom of the invitation, it said coaches at 10. I think it's quite an English thing. So coaches at 10 is an old fashioned thing where you'd go to a ball or an event, and then the horse and carriage would come at 10 and take you home. So that was like, this is when it ends, this is when everyone gets picked up.
Oh, I love that.
So it's an old-fashioned saying, "This is when the event ends and you need to get your ride and everyone's gonna leave at this time." And she said, "I felt so much more able to go to that event because it said coaches at 10. I knew what was expected. It wasn't just gonna go on and on. At a certain point, a quite reasonable hour, it was gonna end and we needed to arrange our transportation and off we go." And she was saying what a help that was. And I think when you express that to others, you realize you're not alone in that. A lot of people feel the same,
Right.
which is where it's really important with the mind not to let it isolate us because it will very quickly make us feel like this is just me. What's wrong with me? And it's very easy for us to do this negative internal maths where we just start adding, I don't cope well with this. What's wrong with me? I struggle with that. What's wrong with me now? And we start adding stuff up. But when you talk to other people, you'll be surprised. The wackiest sounding things are quite relatable to many people that we might talk to. So it's really helpful not to isolate ourselves.
And that's why it's so important, I think, to be a part of a circle of women or a group of people that you have a lot in common with, where you can share these stories. having come from a background now, at least in the last 20 years of circling up with others, and it has been so supportive because you realize that you're not alone at all. And also through the stories that you hear, you learn of different coping mechanisms, different ideas about how people work through things. Social anxiety is a big piece for many, and yet also an interest in doing social events, like for instance a concert. I had a friend that loves concert going, but to get there and to sit through the opening act and then the intermission and then the act itself and then leaving with all the people and all the hustle and bustle, she figured out that her best strategy was to come before the main act, to just miss the opening act, and then to leave before any uh, additional songs are played at the end of the show. Any And that for her was a way to still continue doing something that she loved, but to remove herself from all of the activity right before and right after the show.
Yeah, it's so smart, and sometimes it takes us a while to get the idea that we're allowed to do that. We have autonomy to exercise, and what better place to exercise it than in our own well-being? You've spent your energy, you've done what you need to do, but then you go into depletion because you're trying to deal with whatever happens at the end of an event like that when everyone leaves at the same time, and then you feel exhausted, and then you're recovering from something that you hoped would be a positive experience. But we're very quick to be hard on ourselves, and our mind is very quick to tell us there's something wrong with us or something we can't do. My mind, left unattended, will shut my options down quick as I can blink. And I just have to tell it, no, no, we're not doing this. This is not helping.
That's the question you ask your mind. How is this helpful? Yeah, because our minds are so powerful. And there's a reason why some incredibly brilliant philosopher said, don't believe everything you think. I don't know who to credit that to, but uh, it's such a helpful phrase to remember.
Yeah. And that brings me to neutrality, something I've learned that really is so helpful in my daily life is to be as neutral as possible in terms of talking about not believing everything the mind thinks, to respond neutrally. For example, if the mind, just throws up something like, I think you're getting sick, or I think this is going to be a problem, or what if that happens? If we argue with it, it raises the energy. If we get scared of it, it raises the energy, and then the anxiety kicks in, and then it's kind of got us, really. And then we're trying to reason with it, and we go into this thing of bargaining or on a bad day researching or whatever we might do. But if we can just say to the mind when it does that, because often it's just throwing a wild card out and the mind will do that, particularly if we're tired or not well or stressed, it will do it more. And if we can just say, maybe, maybe, maybe not, or we'll see. You know how you would with a child that's got a kind of an unreasonable demand, but instead of shutting them down and saying no or feeling that you need to negotiate, just come back with something neutral, maybe. I find that really helps with my mind to be as neutral as possible because any energy either way, negotiating, worrying, heightens it and it feeds it. And it's as if it's got our attention and it will just keep coming back and playing that card. And then it will play others to support it.
Yeah. That's why I like the internal dialogue of interesting point of view. You have that point of view. And it does make me laugh every time I say it because I can get hooked so easily. That that Shempa, that Pema Chodron talks about, that hook,
Yeah.
and to be able to just lift the energy a little bit. Yesterday, I started to feel just a little bit of a sore throat, and I thought, what is this? And I went to the place of, oh man, I sure hope you're not getting sick. You did a whole bunch of blah, 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 blah. And I just stopped and I said, you know what? I'm going to have some vitamin C and some zinc, and I'm going to have an apple and um, look after myself and make sure I stay hydrated and do what I know to do. And I'm either going to be all right or I might not. I might have a cold or something might come up, but that's it. And I was able to leave it. There are other times that something like that comes up and I haven't been able to leave it. And it stayed with me because I listened to my mind.
Yeah.
I mean, during COVID times, it affected us in such a big way for all of us to be like, am I okay?
Yeah. I wonder if many of us take those kind of symptoms more seriously now since COVID. Or it may have brought some kind of hypervigilance or feel like a more serious thing than just a bug that you can pick up. But yeah, to respond with care and as neutral as possible really helps. And then also to watch our words. I know we talk about this a lot, but I think it's helpful for us to remind ourselves and remind each other that our mind can lean heavily into a negative bias, especially if we're out of balance. And it will lean into negative outcomes, worst case scenarios. It might start running a dialogue that makes everything feel more anxious and more difficult. It's so sneaky that it gets in before we've realized. So the sooner we can realize, the better. And that really does start with watching our words. If our mind's goading us or it's making a negative prediction, there is a higher part of us, our intelligence, according to Ayurveda, sits above our mind. And the more we can strengthen that, so it can say, hey, this is not helpful. And also to really be very clear that we're not our minds. The mind isn't in control. It thinks it is, and it's very influential, but we're not our minds.
And that's where NLP and EFT tapping come in so beautifully. Even if you can catch yourself with even though I think that's the final straw, I love and accept myself. Even though I've made this mistake, or even though I spilled a bunch of water all over the kitchen floor the other day because I wasn't being present. And rather than get upset with myself or whatever, I'm going to clean it up. It's silly, and I'm not going to admonish myself for it, right? But there was a time when I would. But these phrases of self-love and of honoring and saying, "Oh, okay, I'm a witness to what just happened because it happened to me, but I'm not going to let my mind turn it into something greater. I'm just simply not. So I'm going to tap, or I'm going to repeat these statements about even though X happened, I love and accept myself again and again, or that interesting point of view, or how is that helpful? Or, sometimes when I'm feeling super snarky, I'll just be like, sit your ass down and shut up. I've had, that's not happening today. And it's amazing how that works too.
Yeah, I remember the first time I learned that with my mind. I was in bed. It was the middle of the night, and my mind was on something, and it was becoming fearful. And I saw myself sitting there with like my hands over my head, suffering. And then a part of me just said, "Shut up, just stop," and it stopped. And that's when I realized, oh, there's a part of me that has control over this. It was very quick to try and start again, but something in that relationship had changed because I realized if you just tell your mind, just pack it in, it will give over enough for us to do something else that's helpful. One of my favorite monks that I like to read says that the mind is a crafty ventriloquist. And he also says it's supposed to be the doorkeeper that protects who gets into the club, but often it ends up as your barkeep.
Yeah, right?
So just knowing that helps. Like, no, you've changed your role, and I'm not I'm not following where you're going with this. It's it's a good practice to have some humor, to observe, just to know that we can change things. It's not always easy, but we can. We have some area of influence.
So we've talked about the stories our mind creates. We've talked about how we have fluctuating resilience in those times when our mind wants to direct us with either health anxiety or social anxiety or the ways that our mind can keep us small. And I think we've really come back with some good suggestions on how to combat that, how to, again, ask that mind to run amok to just sit down because we know what to do.
Take a seat. And that's another thing, just before we part ways today, another teaching that's really helped me is to, when my mind kicks in with an anxiety, especially if it's a health anxiety, there's certain times and cues where it will try that one. And my response is, I'm just doing this. Whatever it is, I'm just brushing my teeth. I'm just here to wash my hands. I'm just on my way to water the plants. I'm making something to eat, to just stay with what I'm doing and not allow my mind to pull me into something else. Just the facts of what I'm doing right now. And if you keep doing it, it tries it less and it has less power. But if we give in, then it gains energy and that can take a while to settle. So to just, yeah, I'm just doing this. This is what I'm doing right now. I'm talking with my friend. I'm going to read this book. Whatever it is, whatever simple task it is. And if we're not doing something immersive, then start doing something that gets our attention. Go for a walk and really be mindful and aware of your surroundings. Do something that always, draw a picture, something that always pulls your attention in, listen to an audiobook, whatever it is that catches your attention and puts you in a present but relaxed state. Start doing that and just tell your mind, I'm just doing this right now. And that's it. It's not open to negotiation.
Love that. Thanks, Ananga. I'm grateful we had this conversation today, and thank you to all of our listeners. We appreciate you coming back and listening, and we hope this episode has been helpful for you. And as always, if you'd like to support our Patreon, you're welcome to do so at patreon.com/anxietyslayer. Thanks for listening. We'll see you soon.